Welcome back to the AI Daily Brief, all the daily AI news you need in around 5 minutes. We kick off today with the latest in Meta's talent war, and this one is just the rub-ins, man. Bloomberg's Apple whisperer Mark Gurman reports that Ruoming Pang, the manager in charge of Apple's foundation model divisions, is parting way to join Meta's superintelligence team. Now, Apple had themselves poached Pang away from Google in 2021, and sources said Meta offered a compensation package in the tens of millions of dollars to land this well-regarded AI engineer. Although, frankly, many people thought that even outside of the millions of dollars in compensation, the chance to move on from Apple's dubious AI project might have been another motivation to leave. In addition, sources say that Meta has hired another pair of researchers away from OpenAI and Anthropic to fill out their team. Still, bringing it back to Apple, Gurman's contacts said that this departure could be the first of many from the troubled foundation models team, with, quote, several engineers telling colleagues they're planning to leave in the near future to Meta or elsewhere. Rather than a single replacement at the head of a 100-person team, Apple is reportedly looking to restructure and add a layer of middle management. Always the successful way to approach an innovation challenge. For Meta, outside of just scooping generically talented people, TechCrunch suggested that the Pang hire could bring a specific expertise around designing small on-device AI models, which is, of course, a big part of what Apple had been thinking. The community reacted to this news much as you might expect. First of all, we see the continued trend of people following these career moves like they are the new sports trading news. But a lot of folks brought it back to not just Apple, but Zuck's playbook for poaching talent across the entire industry. OpenAI is obviously not acquirable, at least not in any real-world scenario. So what's the next best move? You don't buy the company, you bleed it out. You go straight for the people who are the company. OpenAI is quite literally nothing without its people, remember? Especially in AI. So Zuck starts cutting checks big enough to short-circuit anyone's loyalty circuits. $100 million, $300 million plus packages. It's just a different kind of acquisition. Just one quiet defection at a time until the center can't hold. Everyone's stuck in traditional acquisition era thinking while Zuck's out here doing Black Ops recruitment like it's Cold War Berlin. Peter Levels also agrees that this is all about OpenAI. He writes, everything Zuck does is to extinguish OpenAI, I think. First it was open sourcing Llama. This way he thought if their model was just as good but free to use, people wouldn't have to pay OpenAI because it was closed. But it didn't work. Then it was essentially buying Scale AI for $14 billion. Scale does a lot of the data labeling and creates a lot of the LLM datasets that OpenAI trains on. Getting control of that and removing OpenAI as a partner makes it harder for them to train models. Next is poaching of the OpenAI staff to hollow it out from the inside. Zuck sees OpenAI as its biggest threat, I think. Now, adding insult to injury, after their controversial announcement of Liquid Glass as their big non-AI announcement for Worldwide Developer Conference, Apple is now entirely backing off of that, showing just how wide the innovation problem is at that company at the moment. Now, speaking of OpenAI and the talent war, as we've been following, OpenAI's stock compensation has necessarily surged in this battle for top talent. According to the information, OpenAI told investors that stock-based compensation has jumped more than 5x over the past year to a total of $4.4 billion. That means stock comp was around 120% of revenues for 2024. The ratio had been projected to fall to 45% this year as revenues took off, but Zuck's talent rate has led executives to rethink the strategy. Chief Research Officer Mark Chen indicated the company will look to get more aggressive with its stock offers to ensure they're competitive. OpenAI is still forecasting the ratio will fall to 10% of revenue by 2030, but 2030 is still a very long way away. The reporting also highlights how little equity there will be to go around as the company looks to convert to a public benefit company. OpenAI employees currently receive profit units rather than traditional equity, but they'll convert along with the venture investors if the conversion goes through. The company's leadership have reportedly discussed scenarios where employees will own roughly a third of the company. Microsoft will own another third, so investors together with the nonprofit will divide up the remaining third. By way of comparison, Google's stock compensation ratio was around 16% of revenue when they went public in 2003, and Facebook's was roughly 6% in 2011. Snowflake was running at around 30% of revenue in 2020. The reality, though, is that as much as investors might get queasy with this, it is very clearly necessary in this particular competitive landscape. Next up, a follow-up to an earlier story. Cursor has apologized for unclear pricing changes that left many users with bill shock over the past month. CEO Michael Truell wrote, "We recognize that we didn't handle this pricing rollout well, and we're sorry. Our communication was not clear enough and came as a surprise to many of you." Now, the change was implemented in the middle of June. Instead of receiving 500 fast responses on frontier models before dropping to unlimited slow responses, pro users are now capped at $20 of usage. Excess usage is charged at the API price. Users can still access unlimited usage through the auto model selector, but that doesn't allow routing to frontier models. That led to a lot of people who weren't aware of the changes to rack up excess usage charges at a dramatic pace. And indeed, over the past week, many users took to social media in outrage after being caught up by the changes. One Reddit user reported that they ran into the rate limit for Sonnet 4 after just 3 prompts. Until a document update late last week, Cursor was advertising unlimited access to Sonnet 4 for Pro subscribers. The user remarked, "It feels like a scam at this point." Oscar Lee wrote, "We paid $7K yesterday for a yearly subscription, and then you immediately pull the rug on us? One of our devs just used all 500 requests in a single day. Is that even legal?" Absicle wrote, "It took me 3 days to blow past the included limits on the $200 Cursor Ultra plan. This can't be serious." Others noted that Cursor had also removed the ability to bring your own API keys, so there's no way to get around those billing practices. Now, to their credit, Cursor reached out to each of those users offering full refunds. They've also extended the offer to anyone with unexpected usage since the change, so if you were affected, get in touch with that team. It's clear to me that this was not a gotcha, this was just a company growing pains kind of moment. Still, while Cursor is trying to make it right, the issue still highlights that usage costs have changed in a big way. They explained, "New models can spend more tokens per request on longer horizon tasks. Though most users' costs have stayed fairly constant, the hardest requests cost an order of magnitude more than simple ones. API-based pricing is the best way to reflect that. And by the way, this is not Cursor alone. Replit are also feeling the pinch, introducing effort-based pricing for longer tasks last month." TechCrunch, meanwhile, suggests this is all due to a price change from the model companies, writing, "Openai and Anthropic have also started charging enterprise customers for priority access to AI models, an additional premium on top of what AI models already cost that guarantees reliable high-speed performance. These expenses may be filtering their way down to AI coding tools, which seem to be getting more expensive across the industry. Given that cost is an increasingly important part of the consideration for enterprises adopting these tools, it will be interesting to see if and how these changes impact how companies think about adopting these new tools." Lastly today, a big acquisition. Fresh off their successful IPO, data center company CoreWeave has agreed to acquire Core Scientific for $9 billion. Core Scientific is something of a sister company to CoreWeave, renting them data center space and long-term energy contracts. They started life as a Bitcoin miner, but made the pivot to AI in 2024 after going through a bankruptcy. As a result of the deal, CoreWeave says they will gain direct access to more than 1 gigawatt of data center capacity. Still, mostly the deal just highlights how intense the demand for AI capacity has become. CoreWeave already made one attempt to acquire Core Scientific last year, but only wanted to pay $1 billion. Although this is an all-stock deal, it's still a huge premium on last year's pricing. CoreWeave is even paying 60% more than market value for the company, underscoring just how desperate they are for additional capacity. In addition to increased capacity, the deal would also wipe out $10 billion in future lease obligations for CoreWeave by acquiring their landlord. CEO Mike Trader said, "When you look at the hyperscalers, they have some infrastructure that they build, and they have some infrastructure that they use third parties to deliver, and there's a reason they do that. And those reasons kind of are applicable to us too. So that's what you're seeing." And so, taking a step back as we roll out, if you look across all of these stories, Cursor having to raise its prices, CoreWeave paying a premium to get access to more data center space, and Meta and OpenAI being forced to pay boatloads of money to keep the top talent, it shows how integral everyone is treating the battle for AI supremacy right now. The short of it is that we are in a very small window that will shape a huge amount of the decade to come, and companies are just throwing all the rules out the window in order to be able to compete. For now, though, that's going to do it for today's AI Daily Brief Headlines edition. Next up, the main episode.